Hey guys! Today we're going to talk about baits for catching Crucian carp. First of all, let's remember what Crucian carp is, what kind of fish it is. A fish like Crucian carp. It gives up, as fishermen say. That's not true. Crucian carp is a cool fish, but sometimes it's a picky little thing, worse than a girl. Basically, Crucian carp belong to the carp family, and they can be found almost everywhere you can think of. In any freshwater, in any body of water, river or pond, there's Crucian carp. There used to be a ton of Crucian carp. I was a little kid. That's how, or maybe even less, I walked with a regular stick. With hazel or with reeds, with a float, with dough, with semolina. I caught these Crucian carp on a worm and there were no problems. Now the Crucian carp, now it's like this. Now it's not like that. I tell him, oh, he tells me here. I tell him here, he tells me, oh. And so, in short, it turns out that I have chosen the top baits from my experience with Crucian carp, what I'm fishing with now, and what I would fish with. Let's stop there. But before we start telling you about baits, let's define that there are baits that you can use for fishing with a float rod, there are baits that you can use for fishing with a feeder or a bottom fishing rod, because they will simply fly off it, and there are baits that you can use for fishing with both. That's how we'll do it. The first bait for me in my topics is semolina, dough, or a mix. It's made almost the same way. So you take semolina, you take flour, add regular water, and just mix it with a spoon. It's good in the jar. For me, this is the number one bait, by the way. How do you make it? I filmed this about 6, 7, or 8 years ago. The link will be in the description for those interested. So, let's keep going. The second bait, in my opinion, is osa worms. They always work well, no matter where we are. You can catch fish with worms both in the river and in the pond. Worms hold up great on both bottom rigs and float rods. But there are different types of worms. There are dendrobana, there are manure worms, there are earthworms, and there are castings. Can you imagine how many worms there are? The best bite is on red manure worms. That's exactly what Crucian carp loves. It holds up well both here and there. But there are downsides. If there are perch in the pond or in the river, even these small perch will annoy you. On worms, that's a big downside of using worms. Plus, it holds up well and lasts a long time. Even in the summer, right now in the heat, your worms will really last a long time in the jar, so you'll always be able to use them. For fishing, there's this cool bait. Since we already started talking about dough and pastes, like dough. Dough is made from peas, meaning the peas cook well. They take a long time to cook. And there's a specific way to mix it, basically. There's a technique to all of this, and it turns out like dough, but this dough is yellow, and it's made from peas. Crucian carp just love it. There was a time when Sergey Ivanovich and I, you probably saw this video, went fishing last year before this cursed war. It was still like that. We arrive at the fishing spot, and basically we cast with worms, with dough, with everything. We're not catching anything. On the other shore, there are some guys sitting. The guys are sitting there. I see he's on a rubber band. 1 Crucian carp, 2 Crucian carp, 3. I can't take it anymore. I shout to him, "What are you catching on?" He doesn't shout, "We're fishing with the dough." I get in the car, drive around the pond to him. We give him 20 bucks. He says, "Give me some dough." But he doesn't give me a handful like that. I arrive. We start catching in the same pond, and we weren't getting any bites. Can you imagine? We sprinkled the dough and the Crucian carp started biting like crazy. For those interested, I'll also leave a link to this video in the description. Check it out when you have some free time. It was pretty cool. That's why the dough is also great, but you just can't attach a float to it. For long distance fishing, the dough won't hold up as well. In general, it slips off the hook, and other fish can bite it too. But Crucian carp and carp will definitely be caught on semolina. By the way, all kinds of fish can be caught on these baits we're talking about. But right now, we're specifically discussing Crucian carp. Let's go. It's exactly about him, about that slippery guy. Therefore, you can say that the master is tough for yourself, but it is long and boring. And semolina is sold in jars, so it's available in jars, in sealed jars with labels looking like some kind of sausage. That's not quite the right semolina. Good semolina, which is sold in a clear jar. So, you know, like a fisherman at home, he cooked a big pot of it, packed it up a little bit, and brought it to the fishing store. And you got it there for very cheap. This is good semolina that will always get you bites. At any fishing trip, you need some kind of tool, whether it's pliers, cutters, or something else. Friends, I want to recommend you some amazing knives from Reik. I want to say right away that all of this is original products. Each knife has its own number. You can check the official website to see that this is not a counterfeit. The Reik knives come in this wonderful presentable box. You could say it's already made as a gift. Instructions, warranty, a belt, and a business card, and the handsome Elford one. I love Reik knives, specifically for their quality. Assembly, it's at the highest level. Nothing is loose anywhere. There are no gaps or cracks. Well, of course, it's the quality of the steel. The steel here is just outstanding. Moreover, the knives are made of stainless steel, my friend. All the tools have a good lock. You open it. The knife doesn't fold. You have to apply some effort. Everything is spring-loaded. The blade of the knife indicates the type of steel. We open the knife, and there are absolutely no play or looseness. Everything is so securely fixed. Wow. It's great, and it feels excellent in the hand. The handle scales are made of impact-resistant and heat-resistant G10 material. But Reik is not just a knife, it's a multifunctional knife that houses more than 15 tools, my friends. It has everything: knives, files, a bottle opener, a screwdriver, both Phillips and flat, and pliers. I don't know how they managed to fit everything in here, make everything high quality and sharp. The sharpening on all of them is just magnificent. I took one knife and put it in my travel bag. Either a backpack and off I go fishing, or a picnic. By the way, there's even a serial number here. You'd think with so many tools, what else could surprise you? Oh no, guys, let me show you right now. Look, the end of the knife. What do we have here? We take it out. Voila, and here's a pair of tweezers. The blade sharpening is of the highest level. I really like that you can take out the tool with one hand. Everything moves smoothly and gently. Full-featured pliers, the whole tool with spring locks and functionalities. It's not for nothing, it's a 5-year warranty. You can see all the additional characteristics in the description at this link, as well as the price of the knife. But I assure you, friends, that this is a knife of the highest quality, and whether you give it to someone as a gift or buy it for yourself, you will stay. Everyone knows what pearl barley is, probably from the cafeteria at school when you go for lunch and they serve you pearl barley. Oh, how tempting it is to eat pearl barley with a bit of grass. Oh, how tempting they look. I want to eat them. Pearl barley with grass. It grows plant bait. Guys, let's steal some pearl barley. Just awesome. Especially in the summer. In spring, man, they just go crazy for pearl barley. They tear it up. You can catch fish with pearl barley using a float or a long line if you carefully hook a few grains. Pearl barley will also hold up. By the way, look at the fish I have here. So that you all catch fish. Such fish are always around, right? So that's why pearl barley is also really cool. Bait, especially if you add a bit of garlic bait to the pearl barley, mix it up, or just a couple of drops of fresh garlic in there. The fish smells good, it makes you hungry. You've probably noticed it yourself more than once, when you sit down to eat having borscht and you take some black bread with garlic, or you just smell garlic somewhere. That's why they add it to rolls and everywhere. This, so to speak, an activator, cool, right? It stimulates you to saliva production. They go through the taste receptors, through all of them, through smell, through saliva, through everything. And you just want to eat, and fish love it just the same. That's why pearl barley is really great for Crucian carp. I would recommend it to you too. Well, pearl barley, what about pearl barley? And that's it. No, wait. Besides pearl barley, maggots work well too. Maggots are also a universal bait. They hold up great on both float and bottom rigs. You can buy maggots. They last a long time, everything is great with them. But there's a downside with Crucian carp. He may be capricious towards him if there is a choice between a worm and a maggot. The Crucian carp will choose a worm from my personal experience again, if the Crucian carp has a choice and there's no other fish, just Crucian carp. Between a worm and semolina, it will choose semolina again. This is from my personal experience, but you need to have maggots. There have been cases when you throw in a worm, and they want it, but they don't want the maggot or semolina. You throw in some small bait and it knocks the maggot off, so you throw it closer to the bottom. The little Crucian carp bit, so I wouldn't use maggots either. They should always be on hand when fishing. They last a long time and they're cheap. I bought a portion there. Let it stay just in case. Corn is casa generally used to catch carp. Yes, we all know that, but guys, No, there was this one time we arrived at the fishing spot with Jack Ochi. Hi, if you watch this video, I catch Crucian carp, they're on a worm, there I try something else here and there. It burns, I'll throw it here. Dalniak with corn holds up well. What is here on the float? What is Dalniak throwing on the long range with corn? I say, nothing will happen to you. Here we need to catch big Crucian carp, guys. These are Crucian carp, and these are not like this. The Crucian carp are not like the ones I drew. These Crucian carp were biting really well on corn. I was shocked. True, either this was just the way the work turned out, or corn is such a universal tackle, but the Crucian carp pecked at the corn. This was for me a phenomenal discovery. Therefore, if you want, try to catch on corn if there is a large Crucian carp, and it will definitely bite, especially if the Crucian carp are of some kind, you know, the breeds of paid ponds. Here there are Crucian carp, and the wild ones are yellowish, and you can see a brown tint on them. There are the bred Crucian carp, which are large and big, raised in these paid ponds. That is, they buy some breed of livestock, and they grow big. There is also some Hungarian half carp, half Crucian carp, something like that I heard. They also bite really well on corn, so always give it a try. Corn is great too, haremjener especially. The store-bought canned corn, it's not just about boiling the cob. There's something about it that doesn't quite work for him. It's like, it should be firmer, it has to be sweet, and specifically it should be very sweet, like honey corn. When I opened the can myself, I took the fish, threw in the bait, hooked it, and threw it in. But the ones that bite the most on corn are definitely the carp, like this one. And this carp seems to have taken a liking to me. You know what I mean, guys? So give corn a try too, but sometimes you get these big Crucian carp that just jump out as well. And there's also the simplest bait that everyone probably forgets about. Take some breadcrumbs, just regular bread, squeeze it with a bit of water and add a little garlic to it. It can be either white or black. It holds well on a float rod, but on bottom rigs it doesn't hold very well. So you should always give breadcrumbs a try. With breadcrumbs, you'll always catch Crucian carp, lassa. While fishing. I guarantee you that because I used to fish with breadcrumbs just like that when I was a kid, I also remember nothing was biting. It's early spring and I came with some bread and garlic. He wound a good one, shouted a piece, and put it there. And I went to catch some Crucian carp. It was indeed wild Crucian carp in the wild pond. It wasn't a pay lake or anything like that. This is a wild Crucian carp. The breadcrumbs were also biting really well. Baits are also categorized by their availability. There are baits that you can buy anywhere. This, for example, is a dung worm. You can dig it up anywhere. Well, in manure, yeah, basically. There's no manure here, it's a forest. Or just buy it at the store. You can find it everywhere, in every fishing store. Just like maggots, there's a bait, like bloodworm, that you can hardly find anywhere. Well, come on, let's have a laugh, a little bit of foam. Yeah, guys, foam. The whole fishing thing with foam is just that the fish takes it because it's above the feeder with the bait. We take a feeder, any spring or something like that, and fill it up. There's a lot of porridge there, and the fish come to eat it. And near the spring we have a few liters, 2, 3, 4. How much does everyone catch? And pieces of foam float on top, just like the hook with the float. So this is how it works. Let's talk about the feeder. Here we pack the bait in, not just the ground bait, but also mamaliga and dough. You can pack all sorts of things in here. And here, the foam is floating on the hook. A small ball of foam, regular construction foam. Sometimes people buy it scented in different colors. I'll tell you, if there's a pond or a river or a spot where fish bite on foam, it doesn't matter what kind, from any construction site, from any box. The main thing is that the ball is big there. There are small foam balls and there are large ones. You take this ball and put it on the hook. The hook is lifted a bit off the feeder. The fish sucks up all the bait and automatically inhales it. That's how your hook with the foam ends up in its mouth. That's exactly why it bites. Not because it likes the smell, the color, or how it floats. You don't have to scent it at all. It just needs something to be wiggling up top, and he takes it. But this usually happens in the summer. This foam is only a summer bait, because the fish rush in blindly like crazy. Whoever first tears off this piece and sucks in everything around, when the water is cool, like in spring or autumn, the fish doesn't behave like that. The fish is more cautious. It's feeling everything out slowly. Not as active, not as attentive, and of course, it won't eat that chemical stuff. For now, you can just try it out blindly like that. I have only fished with foam plastic once in my life. It was once in a private pond a long time ago. But I have to say that I liked it, or it was super cool. No, I'm definitely more inclined towards using plant or animal baits. We have plant-based ones, as I said. Pearl barley, semolina, was everything that is made from plants, and everything that flies is of animal origin. Midges, gnats, worms crawling around, all those little bugs, gnats and mosquitoes. That's why I would focus more on something real, natural, rather than on chemicals. Right now in the modern world, there are tons of different baits like artificial corn, puffs, and mini boilies. And anything goes, but there's a bait called drying, or popcorn as it's called. It comes in different colors and flavors. But the top ones, I think you'll agree with me, are the honey and garlic. The honey one is yellow, I think. The garlic one is a pink colored drying. There are also these tiny mini boilies with rubber, really small ones. My top choice for Crucian Carp. One time, Diamond and I really caught that Crucian Carp. Wow. Even I once caught a big head carp on that bait. Plus, you can only catch with this bait at a distance. I haven't caught anything I put on a float. Plus, it's the same with a flat feeder or a spring feeder. With a short leash, this poof slightly raises our hook if there is silt on the bottom. As a rule, Crucian Carp are ponds where the bottom is not hard or 100. The feeder drops a little, has us, and it starts to dig around while our hook is just slightly on the bottom, about the length of the leader and shorter. This mini boilie lifts it perfectly. It's so tiny, but it works. This puff or popcorn also floats on the surface. It's great, just great. It's so tiny, like, well, I guess this puff or popcorn also floats on the surface. Awesome, just awesome. Downside, the boilie lasts a long time, but the puff comes off quickly. It's hard on its own, but in the water it softens, becomes tender, and swells in size. You cast it out like that, and it just falls apart. It immediately became twice as big. You need to recast every 10 minutes, really often. It quickly comes off the hook. You can catch roach and bream on the puff. I caught a big head carp. Carp, oh, is rare. If it's like this nearby, you have two feeders, one with corn and the other with a puff. The carp won't bite. It'll only be the little Crucian Carp on this thing. So puffs, this mini boilie, yeah, that's it. We used to catch about 20 kilograms of Crucian Carp back in the day. We arrived with Demon. He's using maggots, I'm using worms, back and forth, nothing's biting. I said, Demon, I'm going to try using the puff with the mini boilie now. I have it, I'm casting, and it just took off. It was like a Crucian Carp paradise for us. We caught enough to start and finish there. Here it is. So I would say that in private ponds where there is a lot of Crucian Carp, try it. The bait has its advantages. It doesn't spoil, it doesn't go bad, and it stays on the hook really well. It will keep, damn it, for a long time at your home in the garage. If the mice haven't eaten it, you seal it well in a jar. And it brings you a lot of joy. So this is really cool. The main thing is not to get these poofs wet so that the pack stays. You always have it. Roll them up and pin them, or transfer these puffers into a dip bag so they don't get wet. If moisture gets in, they'll become hard, and then when they dry out, you won't be able to pierce them with the hook. So that's the downside of the puffer, but there are way more advantages. So what have we remembered? There are baits of animal origin and plant-based ones, some that hold well on a float and others that only stay on a feeder. Either on a feeder or on a float, of course. You guys choose what you like. For myself, I would definitely choose a worm, maggot, semolina, masturka, and if you are a long-distance fisherman, that is the best bait. We arrive with a strong rod, take a dung worm, a big one, or dough balls, and you'll always get bites with pearl barley. I forgot about pearl barley on a float. It's great for long-distance fishing. Worm, mini boilie, this one, and you can also try pearl barley. This is the best stuff I would take with me fishing. This is my personal top. And you guys write in the comments what your top picks are for catching Crucian Carp, specifically Crucian Carp. And I'm really curious to read them. Maybe your opinions differ from mine. Maybe they do align. That's really interesting. Because I always read your comments, no matter what you write. There may not always be time or opportunity to respond, but I will always see your messages. So keep that in mind. Thank you all, guys. Peace to everyone and kindness to all. May you always catch Crucian Carp like these of mine, or even more. Hominy. Mamaliga is made from corn. Varesa, it takes a long time, just like corn and peas, but the dough balls are made from mamaliga, which is made from corn. The downside is that the same dough is used, but for float fishing at long distances, Crucian Carp nibble. But to be honest, I would still choose semolina or the dough balls. They are actually the most universal bait for everything. So mamaliga is a 50-50 choice. If you want to try it, go ahead, but I wouldn't put too much emphasis on it. But to be honest, I wouldn't say it's a complete game changer. I would still choose semolina. Either way, dough balls are the most universal bait for everything, so mamaliga is a 50-50 choice. If you want to try it, go ahead, but I wouldn't put too much emphasis on it. Why is it hard to find bloodworms? Where can you buy them? Because bloodworms are abundant in the summer, but they don't store or transport well. Crucian carp bite well on bloodworms, yes, but all the other fish do too. It doesn't store well at all. In the heat, it goes bad right away. It spoils. That's a big downside. And with bloodworms, guys, all the other small fish just tear it apart. So I wouldn't recommend using bloodworms in the summer. Use something else.